everybody, to February's Cumbria Wildlife Trust podcast. I think we can say that spring is just starting to spring. And this morning, what we're going to do is we're going to have a chat with Adam McGinley from Gosling Sike, which is our northern headquarters. And we're going to have a bit of an explore of Gosling Sike and this fantastic community asset that Gosling Sike's become. So welcome, Adam.
Morning, Joe. You're saying about spring having sprung. Some signs of starting in the garden of some bulbs poking through, but otherwise it's still a bit chilly.
So what's your job title, Adam?
I'm the manager at Gosling Sike. So I manage the site here, as well as I'm the horticulture manager. So I manage our wildflower nursery and seed bank and oversee the garden volunteering and community activities that we have going on at Gosling Sike.
We were talking just before we came on air about how Gosling Sike has evolved. And I was saying how we had our northern office in some strange places. We at one point we were in a kennels in Lowther. And then another point before that, we were in a porter cabin in Oltham's car park in Penrith. And then when Susan's farm was gifted to the trust, we set up our headquarters in a porter cabin at the back of Susan's farm. So we negotiated the use of one of the paddocks, and the building is actually a reused porter cabin that was a nursery at a hospital down in Blackburn. And it was ferried up in 4 quarters and stuck back together. And then the beautiful larch cladding that makes it look such a lovely building came off one of my nature reserves as well. So a great story. And from that initial building, which was very utilitarian, has now developed into this amazing community asset, hasn't it?
Yeah, in a relatively short space of time, we've really developed the site as a hub for people and nature. And since COVID, it's really developed as a community asset. We get a lot of volunteers who come to various sessions or events, and it has a real sense of place when people spend time here. So it's a pleasure to be able to look after the site.
And it's developed so well, hasn't it, for its wildlife? I mean, it's a pleasure to sit in the office and look out at the bird feeders in the pond, because you get such an array of birds there.
As an example of that, we do moth trapping a couple of times a year, and over the past 2 years we've recorded more than 200 species of moth from moth traps in the garden. So I think it just demonstrates if you put the habitat there for whatever it may be, that it'll attract the biodiversity of species that we all know is in huge decline.
And then the fantastic bittern that turned up in the wetland.
That was last winter. I think it'll be more than 10 years ago. The trust put in various ponds and boardwalks and paths. And 10 years down the line, we had a bittern overwintering in the ponds. And it was amazing, really. Obviously, they're elusive and shy birds usually, but it was quite brazen in that it was regularly by one of the ponds right by the footpath. So to see that improvement in species diversity on the whole site is really fulfilling.
So Liz, our roving producer, has been out talking to some of the people at Gosling Sike, and she was talking to Lizzie Ben, who is our community development officer for the Cumberland area. And Lizzie's going to take us through some of the wonderful things that are happening at Gosling Sike.
Good morning, Lizzie. Here we are at Gosling Sike, and I'm told it's an example of what anybody could do in their own garden to increase biodiversity.
That's right, yeah. There's lots of different sort of micro habitats spread around the garden, different pieces and ideas of what people might like to replicate in their own wildlife-based back garden. One of the best things about the garden, in my opinion, is the pond, which we're next to now. So this is quite a big garden pond, but it's got lots of different habitats around the edge of it that make it a really, really diverse pond. When we've done pond dipping in here with groups, we've had water scorpions, water stick insects, caddisflies, loads and loads of invertebrates. And then in the springtime as well, we get hundreds and hundreds of tadpoles. So there's lots of different vegetation and rocks around the outside, and shallow sloping gradients, so things like frogs and birds, and maybe even things like hedgehogs and mice can come and get access to the water quite easily.
I've read that a pond it's one of the best things you can do in a garden to increase biodiversity.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's so many different things at different levels, from invertebrates all the way up to mammals that use it. And there's so much going on underneath the water that you wouldn't be able to see and know is happening. But I also think they're one of the best things for us people as well. You can get a lot of enjoyment just enjoying the calmness of the pond. If you have, the sound of trickling water, it's quite relaxing as well.
It's lovely.
So over across on the other side, we've got a bog garden, which is turned into a bit of a hedgehog paradise over the years as well.
Really?
But also in this area, we've got the log piles. So yeah, literally piles of logs all put together. And this creates a really cool habitat for more terrestrial invertebrates. So your beetles, little bugs and flies and things like that. And the reason that's important is because that's going to provide a food source, a natural food source for things like hedgehogs to come and sort of root through in the dead and rotting wood and find those tasty treats that they want.
So nothing goes to waste really, Lizzie, does it?
Yeah, one of the things that's used in the garden is dead hedging. So yeah, just down the path here we've got our first dead hedge. So all the offcuts, when the paths are being maintained, all the offcuts can go in these dead hedges. And again, these are really good for providing habitats for the hedgehogs possibly nesting in here, but also things like mice and again, more beetles, bugs, invertebrates are going to love them.
Oh, this is fantastic. This is the Bug Hotel.
Yeah, this is one of the bug hotels. It now lives in our orchard meadow area here in the middle of the garden. So there's lots of wood with holes in it, bits of bamboo, things like that. All these things stacked up together, which is going to create lots of little hidey holes for spiders and beetles.
And do they live there all the year round, or is it a sort of winter sanctuary for them?
Yeah, so most will probably just spend like part of their life cycle, that winter part. It could be that they overwinter as an adult and so need somewhere to safe to tuck themselves in, or it could be that they're actually laying their eggs in there at the end of the summer, and then they'll hatch out the next year.
Okay.
The grassy area underneath in the spring and summer is fantastic. It's a wildflower meadow.
Oh, wonderful.
So we don't cut the meadow in the summer. It's left from sort of May onwards. So it does get quite long and wild, but that's really good. It allows all the flowers to come out, and obviously our lovely pollinators, our bees and butterflies and everything like that will use the flowers. So leaving an area of your garden where you can allow the grass to grow up is something really good that people can do. So on part of the meadow, as we're walking around, there's some of the seed pods that have been left.
Yeah.
But some of the seed pods are great. So the stems of plants quite often go hollow, and much like the bug hotel, some invertebrates will overwinter in the stems. So that's why even though we do cut it down, we also leave areas uncut for the winter, just to provide that extra bit of winter refuge.
Yeah. Okay, Lizzie, so we're going to leave the garden for a little while now and go and look at one of the other initiatives that's taking place at Gosling Sike, and that's the Men in Sheds project, isn't it?
Yeah. They get up to all sorts of projects and get pestered by us to make things occasionally as well.
Okay, so shall we go in, Lizzie?
Yeah, if we poke our heads into the shed, we'll see.
Oh, wow. It's busy and it's warm.
Hi, Bruce.
Hello, Lizzie. Welcome to the men's shed.
So Bruce, you volunteer here, do you?
Yes, so we all come in, we volunteer. It's been going since about September 23. And basically, men of a certain age, we come in here. But it's a place for well-being for men, really. Mm-hmm. We gather together and we can talk about things. And at the same time, we produce little products that are useful for around the nature reserve, and we also produce things for local schools. We make flat pack bird boxes, etc.
So go on, show me what you're building now then.
Whoa. That there is a hedgehog box. We've also been making swift boxes.
They go up high under the eaves, don't they?
They do, yes.
And do the men who come here, did they know each other before, or is this a whole
Nobody
new...
knew anybody before whatsoever. We've all become very good friends in here, and we have a good laugh and a joke, and yes, I think it's quite good for one's sort of mental well-being. Hello, we have John here, who's actually producing a hedgehog box.
Yeah, hi. I'm built this hedgehog box. We've got the specifications from the hedgehog people, and I'm just putting a lid on it now. We've got putting some old recycled roofing felt on the top, so that protects it from the weather, and the little hedgehogs can go in there and be nice and safe.
And is this the kind of thing you've done before, John?
Well, I've never made a hedgehog box before. I just had a look on the internet at some designs and thought that'll be a reasonable design, and then we got it okayed by the hedgehog people because the door has to be a certain size so that they can get in and other animals can't. But yeah, I thought we'll just give it a go.
Kevin here is busy making bug hotels.
Good morning.
Hi. So what are you up to?
Well, at the moment I'm using old bamboo canes and we're making holes in them so that we can stick them inside a bug hotel, and then during the season the various insects and things can nibble away inside and lay their eggs, and we're making a rather large one at the moment.
Oh, really?
For somebody that's actually asked for one.
You've got a commission?
We've got a commission, yeah, which is great, but it's taking rather a long time at the moment. But yeah.
How big is it going to be?
It's about a metre high.
Wow.
But we made it out of pallets so that we're not having to use new wood. We're actually using and recycling wood in that sense. And then we've got pine cones that people have gone out and picked off for us and brought them around, and anything else that we can use that's can be made into something.
So it's a kind of high-rise bug hotel?
It is a high-rise bug house, yes. We had one on the site, well, there is one on the site, and whoever came in and actually gave us a donation for one of the smaller ones said, well, we'd quite like one of those big ones, so that's what we've been doing for the last few weeks, just trying to get that ready for them.
So now we're going to head to the other end of Gosling Sike and check in the wildflower nursery and see who's in the potting shed today.
So on the way over there, Lizzie, can you tell me a bit more about what you do?
Yeah, so I'm the Community Development Officer for Cumberland, and my role is all around supporting communities to take action for nature. So some of the different projects that I'm working on could be helping support community gardens. I also have different groups that I lead. So we have the monthly Time in Nature group. So that's for people with dementia and their companions. So we do different outdoor activities each month, unless it's chucking it down, when we'll cozy up inside with a cup of tea. But we like to spend as much time outdoors as possible, because it's quite easy potentially for people with dementia to spend a lot of time indoors and not get out like they used to. So we do sort of gentle gardening, wandering around the garden, bird watching, and quite a lot of craft activities too. Hello.
Okay, hi, I'm Lisa, and I'm sowing at the moment small scabious seeds, which will produce a small purpley blue flower for the wildlife reserves. We sow them in these trays, and then when they're about this size, so about maybe a centimetre or two, but when they've got their second set of leaves, we prick them out into these deep-rooted plugs to give them a good root, which makes them nice, healthy plants when they go out onto the reserves and gives them a good start. Yes.
You're just spreading these tiny little seeds onto the compost?
They are, yes.
And will they get covered, or do you just leave
very,
them?
very lightly, yes. And then we tamp them down with this and give them
With a
water,
board.
and then we put them in the warm area to bring them on a little bit.
Okay.
Make them.
I guess you can't do this all year round. You must only be able to do it in the
It's only
spring.
just starting really the sowing season actually, but it's a little bit later I think than last year because it's been so cold. So things haven't grown very fast yet. So Adam was saying this morning, there's about 80,000 plants we grow every year. The idea is to try and create corridors where pollinators can fly from one batch of one particular flower to another batch of a particular, rather than planting a whole field of scabious and then 2 miles away another field of scabious. You've got a bit of scabious, and then about a few yards you've got another bit of scabious, and they can fly from one section to another.
It's all about linking, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why we use roadside verges quite a lot, and railway lines are brilliant for that kind of thing.
And are these scabious that you've been putting in?
This is oxeye daisy.
They're lovely on a roadside verge.
Yeah,
They
they are
sway,
nice.
don't they,
Yes,
when the
yes.
cars go past?
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about how you got involved.
Well, I came to a sow and grow event that Adam was running, just showing you how to sow seeds. And I do sow seeds and enjoy growing things at home. So I thought, well, that's something I can do that will be helpful to wildlife. And I'm quite happy to do it. And it's been lovely socially to come along and every Friday and work with lovely people doing something I enjoy.
Yes.
And how about how you feel about this place?
Oh, absolutely love it. Yes, I love it. It gives me something to look forward to every week, and it's lovely coming here socially and meeting the people, and you get to know the people, and it's just lovely to see things growing.
I would say the best day of the week for me.
Is it really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So what is it about it that you like so much?
Oh, it gives me a purpose. It makes you feel you're doing something worthwhile. It's a very beautiful place and very good, nice people.
Does coming here make you feel a bit less helpless about climate change and the loss of biodiversity and all that sort of thing? Does this make you feel a bit more empowered?
I think for me it does. I know that we've lost so many wildflower meadows. I think it's 97% of them have been lost. And I think feeling that you're actually helping to do something to restore that is a good feeling, even if it's just in well, it's actually quite a large way, I suppose, in our small area. But even if it's just a drop in the big ocean, I'm not doing nothing. Yeah.
Perhaps I should just go and find out what's happening over here in this other corner.
Well, I'm Hazel and I'm currently filling pots with compost to pot up some of the plants in.
So what sort of plants are they?
This one is bladder campion, which is a plant for damp places, I think. And the other one I was doing was fennel, which was very nice to work with because you can smell the aniseed from it.
And how did you get involved?
Well, I already knew Rhiannon, and I thought this would be a nice thing to do. And so for a while it was just Rhiannon and me in this shed, but now that we've got Echo and Lisa, it's a really nice, we get on well, and it's lovely and companionable.
Hello there.
My name is Echo, so I'm currently sowing some red clover because I only joined the last May. I heard it from my friend, so she mentioned Gosling Sike. So it's nice to find venues like this locally. So I can't drive, but you can get here by bus, which is very convenient for me. So just have a nice day out somewhere a bit away from the city centre.
Do you look forward to coming every Friday?
Absolutely. We keep saying that Friday is one of the days we're looking forward to the most. It just always excites us, and to see what's the difference in the garden today. And then you learn so much more fundamental skills for, obviously you learn these from the experienced gardeners, and then you can use this skill you learned in the garden here, but at the same time you can apply those same set of skill in your own garden and make a difference for your local wildlife as well. So even just one corner in your own garden, that makes a huge difference for the local wildlife. So any small change, it definitely makes a huge difference.
Well, what a fantastic insight there. It just shows how many great community engagement projects are going on at Gosling Sike. The garden's been such a fantastic success. And you've won loads of awards, Adam.
Yeah, that's right. We very much manage the garden with nature and wildlife in mind. So for the past 2 years, we've won an award for biodiversity. We also received an award for community gardening. It's the RHS's It's Your Neighbourhood award. So that's where you demonstrate that you are working with the local community, different groups, encouraging sustainability in your gardening, adopting things like composting, recycling, reusing. So it's more than just your garden kind of prowess. It's more the holistic gardening and community involvement. And then we also won a national award from Britain in Bloom for wildlife gardening. So again, that recognises the efforts that the volunteers and the staff have been making. So it's some real strong recognition for the hard work that the volunteers do.
And pretty much all managed by volunteers, isn't it? I'm sure you
Yeah.
said to me the other week that you don't need to get your hands dirty anymore because the vols do
I try not to, yeah. So we've got 2 apprentices and myself who manage the garden with the volunteers. With the various different volunteering that we have at Gosling Sike, over the course of the week, we could probably have 40 to 50 volunteers attend.
You came in initially, didn't you, to help set up this idea of being able to grow on plants that we can then use within our conservation project. We've just put 500 out on my reserve at Bartbooth.
Yeah, so I came in at the back end of a project called Get Cumbria Buzzing, and that project was to grow several thousand plants over the period of the project, which I think was 2 years initially. And my role when I came in was to kind of develop the nurseries to be able to grow more plants, also to include more volunteers in that process. So in the last couple of years, we've been able to scale up the nursery production to be able to supply internal projects like the grasslands team and pollinator teams and so on. So it's really coming on really well in the nursery, so much that we're kind of running out of space and capacity for what we can grow.
I was going to say, because there are moves to expand, aren't there, and to move into other areas. You've already started growing some shrubs, haven't you, for the Skidder Forest project?
Yeah. So the demands internally have generally been kind of grassland species and meadow plants and wetland plants, but we would like to do more. So potentially looking at ways that we can supply plants for the peat team. Also, as you mentioned, shrubs and trees for Skidder. So we've started with some juniper. The back end of last year, and if we can find a bit more space to grow a bit more, then we definitely will.
And tell us a bit about the seed collecting project then, or the seed bank project, because you've got a lot of seeds in cold storage, haven't you?
We have, yeah. So a couple of years ago, we were fortunate to get funding from Cumbria Waste Management to set up a project to create and run a seed bank to grow some plants for local sites. So that enabled us to be able to create a brand new facility at the nursery where we can collect, store and process seeds in the correct fashion, so that we've got a repository there where we've got seeds of Cumbrian provenance where we know they've come from. So we've got a really good facility here now where we can look at the short-term conservation of growing lots of meadow plants, but then longer-term conservation in collecting and looking after the rarer species. So we've been doing that for just over a year in the seed bank.
Brilliant. And this is all done with volunteers as well, isn't it?
So yeah, we have generally 12 to 15 volunteers come every week. They help with seed sowing, pricking out, seed collecting. And one of the things with this new project that I mentioned, the Cumbria Seed Bank project, we're trying to attract perhaps a younger group of volunteers. So we're looking at introducing new volunteering sessions on weekends, for example, because there is a skills gap, certainly in horticulture, and we want to try and help preserve the plants and the native habitats, but also encourage younger people into this area of conservation.
Talk about multifaceted. Not only is it training people up and getting people involved in the sector, skilling people up, but also all of those volunteers at Gosling Sike, it's just so good for their well-being. It's brilliant for them as much as it's brilliant for us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, let's have a listen now to Terry and Gary. Now, Terry and Gary have been charting the exploits of hedgehogs at Gosling Sike. I was amazed when I heard about this, and I never realised that we had so many hedgehogs. So Liz went out again on what sounded like a very cold day to have a listen to what they've been doing in tracking hedgehogs and hedgehog behaviour at Gosling Sike.
Well, hello. You're the hedgehog champions of Gosling Sike.
Oh, you could put it that way.
So tell me a bit about yourselves and how you became so committed to hedgehogs.
Well, I was part of a wildlife group in Carlisle, and one of the volunteers had looked after a little sick hedgehog, but she was a bit reluctant to release it. So she asked if we would take it to our garden just to see how it went, and his name was Spike.
Spike.
Yeah, the little boy that had the hedgehog previously, he called him Spike. We watched him in the garden for about, 8 to 10 days. And he was feeding well himself. So we said to Adam, would it be all right if we released this little hedgehog? And he said, no problem at all. So that's how it all began.
Because you live just across the road, is that right?
Yes, just about 5-minute walk.
So the story started with Spike,
Yeah.
but now it's much, much more extensive than that, isn't it? Can you tell me what you do?
So every night we come out here from around about mid-March to mid-December, and we put 6 cameras out at various points where we know where we're going to have hedgehog activity. And on a morning, Terry will come and pick the cameras up, and we'll spend up to around about 3 to 4 hours every morning going through all the footage. So the process is we'll come over early on in the evening, put food and fresh water out, take away the old bowls every day, wash them and sanitise them, put new ones out. And after that, cameras out, and then we may sometimes wait to see if we see anything. But now we tend to rely more on the camera footage.
And what sort of things do you see on the camera footage, Terry?
Well, we see them sometimes having fights, like Spike and Billy. Billy's I don't know where Billy came from, but Billy was a big hog and he was a dominant hedgehog. And one night we've got footage of Spike coming along and just right into him. And it was roly-poly, wasn't it, initially? And that was it. So Spike is now the dominant hedgehog.
So what's happened to Billy?
Oh, he still comes in and feeds, but he respects Spike now.
So Spike's top hog?
Yes, he is.
The males won't tolerate other males, especially at the breeding season stage. So they tend to spar and show how strong they are, so as to be able to be the first choice for breeding. So we're hopeful that this year, with Spike and Billy and Joy and Penny, Piper, we're hoping we're going to have hoglets this year.
Oh, well, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful, wouldn't it? I mean, when they do have hoglets, how many do they have and how big are they?
Oh, well, people don't realise just how small a hoglet is. When they're in the nest, they're called a nestling, and when they go out foraging for the first time, they become a true hoglet. But I always refer to them as hoglets. If you think of a 2p coin, that's how big a baby hedgehog is when it's first born.
My goodness.
It's around about 8 to 10 grams, 15 grams at the most, totally hairless, no spines showing. It has spines, but it has a membrane over its back filled with liquid, and it suppresses the spines so it doesn't hurt the female when she's given birth. Miraculously, those spines start appearing within an hour of birth. And by 24 hours, they've got a covering of white spines, juvenile spines. So when they're in the nest, they are totally dependent upon the mother. And they're blind and they're deaf for the first 14 days of their life. But once they get through that first 14 days to 28 days, their weight will have increased from around about 10 grams, believe it or not, to around about 150, 160.
Wow.
By the time she takes them out foraging, at 6 weeks, they're around about 250 grams. The mother will stay with them, teach them how to forage to find food for the next 2 weeks, and at 8 weeks she'll abandon them.
They're on their own after 8 weeks?
They're on their way. It means it's going to be August, back in July, early August, when they're starting to go their own way. And miraculously, when she abandons them, however many hoglets there are, they all go in separate directions, so as not to impinge each other on food. There's usually between 4 and 6 hoglets in a brood, and statistics indicate that 1 in 4 die in the nest, and that perhaps, if they're lucky, 1 in 4 will make it to the following season through hibernation. There are so many problems for hedgehogs. We've got to help them as much as we can without actually making them reliant upon us for food. So we tend to pull back on the amount of food that we put out towards the end of the season, and certainly pull back in the middle of the breeding season so to make them go and forage for themselves, because we do not want them to get totally dependent upon what we're doing.
Sure. It's a vicious wind today, though, isn't it?
Cruel wind. We're going this way.
Okay. So you just brought me into the bog garden, and this is where you release Spike, isn't it?
Yeah. Base of this tree started it all for us. It looks different in winter. At the time it was a massive growth in leaves, and I made a nice little nest for him. I put a plastic cover over the top of it to stop the rain getting in, and he went straight in. And we started leaving food and water outside for him. And he stayed there for about a week, and then he was gone.
And how did that feel?
Well, initially it was a bit scary because obviously we didn't know where he was or if he was still alive. But we started coming over at night late and we recognised him. He's got a very light V just on his head, so we recognised him instantly. So again, we used to leave food here for him, and that was it. We monitored him, and then he moved on further down into the orchard area.
So how far do they go?
They can travel up to about 2 kilometres a night, so they'll feed here a little bit and then they'll go out into the fields and then come back.
But you reckon there is some nesting here?
Yes, there is. On the dead hedge there, we think that may be where Penny is, and then there's one, we think Spike might be down behind the oak tree because he goes up over the edge on a night, and then we don't know where he goes, obviously.
We decided very early into last season that we needed feeding stations and sleeping stations. So a gentleman I know made some for me, and we now have one feeding station here, which is a double feeding station. That's that one, and it's a double feeding station to allow a hedgehog in, and for another one, if it's already in there, to go out if it doesn't like who's come in.
So it's a little two-door
detached.
Two-door detached hutch.
Boxes there, sleeping boxes there. So if we go down here into the orchard, and this is where you get basically the likes of Joy, Penny, Piper, sometimes Wilbur. Sometimes Billy. They'll come to this single feeding station here. But we'll start putting food out probably within the next 2 weeks, and cameras as well, because we don't know exactly when the first will come out of hibernation, and when they do, they'll be hungry.
Yeah. Well, shall we just go in for a bit of shelter because it's so very cold out here, and you could just talk to me a little bit about how people can help in their own gardens. So, Terry and Gary, can you tell me a bit more about what the hedgehogs are doing right now? So, sort of mid to late February.
People think that hibernation is an animal going to sleep, but it's not. It is a total physiological change. Now, a hedgehog will have a heart rate of around about 37 beats every minute. It'll breathe at around about 190 breaths a minute. It takes about 18 hours for a hedgehog to go into hibernation, to shut his bodies down. And during that time, its heartbeat down to about 1 or 2 beats an hour. His breath will be around about maybe 2 to 3 an hour. It could even be less than that, depending on how cold the weather is. At this time of the year, they will be just about ready to be stirring. They seem to have an internal body clock, which regulates their ability to sense when is a good time to come out and start feeding. So at this time of the year, we're just getting ourselves ready for the next season. I've put all my IAMs in.
IAMs, that's dog food, isn't it?
No, it's IAMs 1 to 12 month kitten food. And the reason we put kitten biscuits out is they last longer in the outside than meat would.
We'll probably start putting a camera out next week, just at the feeding stations, just to see if there's any hedgehog activity. If there is, then we'll start putting food out and fresh water, because they will be hungry. So that's why we do feed them a lot when they come out of hibernation, just to get their body built back up and to get the strength back.
I said earlier, Spike went into hibernation weighing probably 1 kilo. He'll come out looking maybe around about 750, 800. So he'll be a little slimmed down version, but he'll still have that little pale V on his head that we'll identify him by.
Are you looking forward to seeing him back again then?
Oh yes, we're eager to find out that they've all survived. That's a concern right through winter for us.
Lots of people listening to the podcast and are going to be wondering what they can do for hedgehogs who may turn up in their garden. What sort of tips would you have for them?
Well, leave out fresh water. They do eat cat food, so if you feed them cat food, obviously you need to take that in every day if it's not eaten. You can't give them fish at all, or milk. So fresh water, kitten biscuits is ideal. And if you've got a little hedgehog box that, they can go in and maybe nest in. But also, it's a good idea for gardens to have little gaps in their fence where hedgehogs can get through so that they can wander through different gardens.
Because you were telling me they actually can travel quite a long way in one night.
Yeah, they can travel 2 kilometres a night, yes. So it is good if they can go around all different gardens and forage for food.
And they're good for the garden, aren't they? Gardeners like hedgehogs, don't they?
They do. A lot of people think hedgehogs eat only slugs and snails, and that actually only represents about 3% of their diet. Their main food is basically grubs, caterpillars, insects, beetles. So that makes up the major part of it. They'll eat earthworms. They've been known to dig down 3 or 4 inches to get an earthworm.
How many hedgehogs are there here?
Last year we recognised 9 different individuals, which was 4 more than the year before.
Let's hope this season goes well for them and the numbers come up.
Yes, hopefully.
And hoglets.
And hoglets.
We want hoglets.
They've taken over your life, really, haven't they?
We love it. They're our family.
Family and friends.
Well, what an amazing project. All those hedgehogs at Gosling Sike, who knew? Quite incredible the way Terry and Gary, that they're so keen and doing such a great job in tracking those hedgehogs and putting so much time into it, Adam.
Yeah, Gary and Terry are so knowledgeable and passionate about the hedgehogs and Gosling Sike, and we really appreciate their efforts and inputs here in the garden.
Fantastic.
So yeah, they're absolutely fantastic.
I mean, I learned so much about hedgehog ecology. They are incredibly knowledgeable, and I think the way that links to the wildlife garden and shows what you can do in terms of making your garden wildlife friendly, getting all those invertebrates and all those things in that the hedgehogs eat, so making those right habitats and filling that garden full of the wild food. I'm sure supplementary feeding has its place, but making those habitats for those wild animals is absolutely critical, isn't it? And then making sure that they link up, because hedgehogs have big territories, don't they? And they can cover quite a lot of ground.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And by taking on board some of these ideas that we demonstrate in the garden, people can do their own bit and take action for nature in their own backyard.
Absolutely. Adam, give us a little bit of an insight as to what the future holds then for Gosling Sike.
Essentially, it's more of the same at Gosling Sike. We want to engage with more people and include more volunteers, run more events and that kind of thing. On the horticulture side, we're very much, over the next few years, delivering this the Cumbria Seed Bank project. That's funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and they've been really supportive with a number of projects in the past. So the next few years we'll be delivering that. Also, we'll be developing links with Kew and the Millennium Seed Bank. They were really important when we set the seed bank up in terms of advice and ideas of how to run a seed bank and what protocols to put in place. Because we are looking at more technical propagation of things like orchids and maybe sphagnum moss, things like that, as well as growing the meadow and the grassland plants, and just continuing to build the momentum here that's built over the past few years.
What a great place, and what a great thing for the trust to get involved with. Absolutely superb. Thank you very much, Adam. That's been brilliant and really insightful. Like I always say, if anybody's got any good ideas for future podcasts or wants to hear anything, then drop us a line to mail@cumbriawildlifetrust.org.uk. Thank you again to Liz, our roving producer, for getting out and doing those brilliant interviews. And hopefully everybody is raring to get out onto our nature reserves and seeing those first flowers and hearing those first birds singing. So until the next podcast, it's goodbye from me, and thanks a lot, Adam.
Thank you.